it's not the first time we see subsidies for certain industries.
Mhm.
If you go back in the early 2000s, the solar industry in Germany was highly subsidized. So it was clearly regulated how much output there is, how much panels per roof, and whatever. So it was to corner the market for the German producers, and they grew very big. There was no point of entry for China as they had lower wattage per square meter, and they started their R&D process, develop. The German reached the border of the subsidy. So if they had more effective panels, they would fall out of the subsidy, so nobody will buy it. The R&D machine rolled in Far East, and after a while, the panels from China were, even without the subsidies, were cheaper and better at the same time. And then that's the death punch for this industry. And my saying was, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes.
Welcome to Gold Casting Podcast. Yet another episode with me, Staffan and Fabian Niklas, speaking about casting industry. As you can hear today, I am in a calm, slow mode because we are looking at the podcast ahead of us now that is dealing with what's happening with all the taxes, the tariffs, the trade war, if you like. And we see that this is influencing our industry, and we think it will be a major driver for a lot of factors that we only right now can speculate about. So, Fabian, what are we looking at right now?
We have several issues coming up. The latest one was the 100% tax on EVs that are imported from China into the US. For a while now, we have about 22% tax on everything that's casting. And also from the EU, there's something coming up in 2026. The CBAM is going to be live. So that's a tax on the carbon footprint of products, which favors countries with a lower carbon footprint or production within the EU. And if you have a high carbon footprint in the products like in China, you have a bad time and pay a lot of taxes.
But why do we think this is happening?
The major thing that everybody sees the slowdown of the industry, as you can see it now with the EVs. Everybody who wants to be on the forefront of technology or sees himself as a more innovative guy that already has an electric car. The EVs are not in the mass market at the moment. And that takes some time, and you can see it at the valuations of all the EV brands dropping by 70, 80, 90%. A lot of layoffs in that area.
Yeah, really. I was checking the stock listings of Lucid, Rivian, and other car makers. I mean, they have been around for a few years, and they have some models or Amazon trucks and whatever that is actually pretty cherished by the market. But I agree, the stock market is now not too happy with the newcomers in the vehicle production of electrical vehicles. That's for sure.
Especially you can see it that as soon they ramp up their production, they have to pay more per car to ship it out. And the latest fiasco of Fisker, which the car is too expensive, doesn't sell, is not ready yet, that it reaches the market, which is not how to build a car. It's more like, again, the software, the usability of the car.
But anyway, we have some governments also. I mean, laws doesn't come up automatically because a car maker is asking for protection from competition. But I kind of guess we have seen car production in Europe going from 2022 to 2025, pretty much 50% reduction of the volumes, which is a crisis if we look at Europe, for example. And I'm kind of guessing that what we're seeing, even if we call CBAM an environmental thing, it is actually part of a package where governments are pushing for some protection of their own industries to not plummet in employment rates. That I think is pretty visible now.
That's a big issue, especially look at the car production. How many people are directly employed within the supply chain, and then the addition that their family, also where they shop, how many people are affected by the car industry. That's crazy how many people.
Oh yeah. So, dear listeners, We can only speculate, but we have picked out a few that we would like to discuss with you guys. And let's start with the first one that's pretty evident. If you have a tax, an import tax, what do? Rule number A1, start production inside the toll border. That is something that we think will happen massively. And if we look at this, we already see it in Europe. We had before Christmas the BYD announcement. This year, I bet that we'll see one or two more that will enter the European Union. Question is what's happening in South Carolina. I don't have full visibility of this, but probably you'll see a couple of Chinese brands go into the US with assembly as well. Question is, what will it mean?
Yeah, as soon as you are within the realms of that country, or in our case, within the European Union, you're not affected by the CBAM anymore. You can produce your cars there. It also depends how much you have to produce. It probably can be something like you have two halves of the car, you put them together, and now it's made within the EU. It actually really depends on the fine print of this legislation. But if you ship something like three pieces, put them together, now you've produced a car within the realms of the European Union, and now it's not targeted by CBAM.
You can conclude the first thing. If you are thinking about an education in a law and going into to be an expert in tariffs and customs and stuff, you probably find a lot of work and high payments in the road ahead, because a lot of people will have a lot of questions about this.
We've seen in the other podcast where we talked with Linge, if you import an aluminium window, it's a product. It's not subjected to CBAM. But if you buy the profiles to make that window, then you're affected.
I think the newcomers are much faster. I think that is the big threat. And when they start to come here, the first wave is the first wave. I think all these tariffs will hinder the development or slow down the entry of new brands in sales, because they will be expensive and all that. But once they are here, it will be like the yellow Datsun 1978 that I always brag about, remembering that the first Japanese wave that came, they were pretty, they rusted a lot. They were yellow. There were a lot of things, but they were cheap. No one is laughing about Toyota, Honda, Mazda today. They're good cars. And I think we'll see this happening very fast because of the lack of legacy, in short.
Also, there will be definitely a two-wave scenario. As you see momentarily, companies like BYD, they're ordering roll-on, roll-off ships like crazy. I heard some rumors that they ordered something like 200 ships. They already received 7 ships. So each ship carries around 6,000 to 7,000 cars, and it takes them somewhere around 2 months, 3 months to get to Europe with 7,000 cars that are Chinese produced. And that's quite a lot. If you get every 2 months 7,000 cars sell, that's quite a lot. And especially looking at a price point, I always like to point out the ID3 example. It's produced in Germany as well as in China. In Europe, you're around 40,000 euros starting price. The Chinese model ID3 is around 15 to 16,000 euros converted in money. And it's not, this price difference doesn't come from the cheaper labor, cheaper materials. It's probably a loss leader in the Volkswagen group to be halfway competitive with the Chinese brands.
Yeah, it should be worrisome from many. But if you're a foundry, I think the big challenge is that here you have an entry of a number of brands. Then you have 2 problems. First of all, you don't know who will be successful over time. That's one thing. But if we disregard that and take the practical marketing and sales dilemma, is you don't know them. You don't have the same relationship with them on number of levels. You haven't been part of the strategic design discussions. You haven't been around, so you know what kind of platforms and things that are upcoming. So you have a serious problem actually starting to feed them with the castings. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2, and here comes a speculation from me, mere speculation. But when I look at the Chinese foundries that are entering Europe and starting production in Europe, not that many as far as I can see, but they are super strong suppliers to the Chinese manufacturers, meaning that there's a reason why they're moving here, because someone between the car company and the foundry group has had a discussion, said, if we start in Europe, will you follow us? And they evidently has says, yes, sir, we will support you. So maybe the door of getting into those is closed from the start.
Probably it's the same thing what happened to all the European car manufacturers when they started in the 60s, 70s to build up their production in China.
Mm.
All the foundry groups went with them over there, built up shop there.
Mm.
And now it's the wave back when the Chinese OEMs start. Can also be an opportunity that not all the foundries casting all the products you need for the platform move at the same time. So there's a possibility opening up to get in to acquire business.
Probably, because I mean, end of the day, you're in Europe. You have European legislation, European salaries, European blah blah blah. A lot of things. The only thing that might differ between you and your Chinese colleagues is cash, I would say. Because if you look at the foundry industry in Europe, what I hear at least is that many people have had filled order books, no profits because of the energy prices and the difficulties to actually get energy. Meaning that they have been running the machines 70, 80, 85% usage time, but they haven't made that pile of money. But it seems that the Chinese colleagues have pretty much money to invest in people, in equipment, in land, and also have the culture to do that. So I think here lies the big difference: cash and willingness to use it.
And also a tendency to do a sort of business development, which
Mm,
has never been the strong suit of European foundries.
mm,
If it's not on the portal, it doesn't exist. It's a big different thing for Chinese foundries groups.
mm.
If you have a full stack equipped machine hall, you will find business anyway to fill the machines that are just standing around.
I need to speculate about something else now, dear Fabian. If this would have happened 6, 8, 5, 4 years ago, I would be looking a little bit pale and nervous, and really had a bad feeling about this because when I was traveling China before COVID-19, everything was super fast. Governmental money was flooding all over the place, and we had a feeling that this is unstoppable. Today, I'm not that sure. Today, I think that the internal problems in China is actually quite massive when it comes to the real estate business. I mean, if you look at the GDP of China, real estate is actually 22%. What is it in Germany? 5, 6?
I think somewhere around globally, it's somewhere around 4 to 6%.
Yeah, roughly. So they had this super industry that is consuming people, money, and so forth. And we know it. Housing drives even more people than actually car production. So what am I saying? Well, maybe the Chinese government cannot keep up the pace with subsidiaries and helping the Chinese exporters to become even stronger. It might be that we actually start to see a limit of how much support you can get if you are a Chinese automaker trying to export your cars. Because they're running out of money. And who's actually going to lend them? It will be the people of China, of course. You
Yeah,
see my point?
I see the point that there's definitely a limit to it. But also, I would like to raise another point. What does it make to make an EV? As the production line of an engine is highly complex, everything has to be fitted to the tightest tolerance. It's quite easy to produce electric motors, which have been produced in China for more than 30 years.
Mm,
If you piece everything together for an EV and
mm.
battery technology, where do you find it? South Korea, Japan,
Yeah,
China.
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
All the materials for the EVs, you will find all of them, the rare earth, all of them in China. So
Mm.
they have a huge advantage from the start
That is
because
true.
all the European OEMs, they all buy it from LG, Samsung, so I don't know where to get their batteries fitted. Electric motor is not a too complex thing. That's usually outsourced to the tier ones. Build that electric motor. So where is the core competency when the ICE falls away? It's in the software. And piecing some panels together and putting in a powerful computer that runs excellent software, and you can update that software continuously.
Mm.
That's something where you have a very low barrier of entry.
But
And
you had a saying about this with history. What was the quote that you used in our discussion earlier?
earlier, the discussion was about it's not the first time we see subsidies for certain industries.
Mhm.
If you go back in the early 2000s, the solar industry in Germany was highly subsidized. So it was clearly regulated how much output there is, how much panels per roof, and whatever. So it was the corner the market for the German producers, and they grew very big. There was no point of entry for China as they had lower wattage per square meter, and they started their R&D process, develop. The German reached the border of the subsidy. So if they had more effective panels, they would fall out of the subsidy, so nobody will buy it. The R&D machine rolled in Far East, and after a while, the panels from China were, even without the subsidies, were cheaper and better at the same time. And then that's the death punch for this industry. And my saying was, history doesn't repeat itself; it rhymes. Probably we see something similar, not the same thing,
I
but
think,
probably there are some parallels.
speaking about this ride here, I get a feeling that when we saw this again, my Mazda 1978, making an upgrade was the drawing table, the prototype, blah 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 blah. But I mean, 60, 70, 80% of a lot of upgrades in an electrical vehicle is a software. It downloads between Saturday and Sunday night. That's faster. That's the new landscape, I think.
Yeah, but then it comes down how you develop your electronics. I see this perfect different with my Tesla. Do I get a higher comfort level in a Mercedes Benz? Of course. Is there a better BMW from the noise canceling, from the seats? Definitely. They can build that better.
Mm.
But if it comes down to the software, there's one central processing unit that handles everything. And if you want to do something new, update comes in, it gets it. But how do you push an update for 127 controlling devices somewhere down the line, which you cannot even access because they're intelligent property from someone else, or
Yeah.
connected via a CAN bus, which was developed by Bosch in the 70s, that has a transmission rate of 1 Mbit?
Mm.
Yeah, have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, have fun. Yeah, so it will be messy. That's what we're saying. And but we also are saying that maybe China cannot afford to be that strong in supporting its own industry for the upcoming 20 years, if I put it that way. I mean, it's one shouldn't make predictions, but I saw that the housing prices fell 6.9% here in April, for example. They've been on a downturn for quite long. That tells me something. That there's an adjustment. Will it be a crisis? Hope not, because no one wants to have the second largest economy in the world having a big, deep crisis. That will not happen because of the political system in China. But anyway, slowing down for sure. That's what the experts are saying. And if it slows down, means less taxation, means less money for the government to spend. In short.
But it can be a very bad cycle if everybody is taking up these protective measures,
Mm,
also increasing the subsidies, and everybody subsidizing each other. So you cancel out
mm,
these tariffs, just do it on the pockets of all the taxpayers.
mm.
And that's something that can be a terrible thing. And
It is. Yes.
back to your original comment to the Chinese OEM, if they don't get as much support from the government, then they can raise the prices from their cars from, let's say, 16,000 euros to 25,000, and they're still 15,000 cheaper than the ID3.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. But I mean, what's a big push here with all the tariffs? What always happens, according to most history, is that you crawl inside the border, and in combination, what I was just worried about China, and I hear that the Chinese market is pretty sour. The competition is fierce. Everybody with a die casting machine doesn't make any money by guaranteed anymore making profits. So what's happening, and then you see companies moving to Europe. One takeaway could be that they don't want to have all the eggs in the same basket. They need to expand their business. They need to start in North America. They need to start in Europe to not have everything in mainland China. I think this is one reason from the owners of these foundry groups as well.
Yeah, that's a perfect risk mitigation strategy to have several plants all over the world producing also regional settings of the car.
Mm,
The Chinese buyer has a different wants in his car than the American or the European buyer.
mm,
You can be fine-tune the models to fit the market better. And I
yeah,
think if they do that in a second wave, it will be a very hard time for the existing brands that really
absolutely.
struggle at the moment to get the cars out. And also they have a price tag which is way above what most people can afford.
But I've been involved in development projects in China, and going to real meetings. We were speaking about before COVID now, and I've been, as you know, involved in many development projects in Europe. And the speed in a Chinese development is much higher. They make more mistakes, absolutely. They have a different recall culture and all these things, but there are less people. It's more time pressure. Things are made more in a repeating evolutionary way that you actually do a change and then you put it into your platform and then you do the next change, next change. And that is, I think, if you want to develop a car that costs you 16,000 euros, you cannot afford to have so many people in all the projects at the same time. So you have to work with less people, and that will be the death of many of the systems that we see: quality assurance, sourcing, supply, blah 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 blah. I mean, there are tons of people in Europe that are most of them are doing a great job, but I would say that there's a fair proportion that is actually making a job that is not really contributing to the value of the car.
Yeah, there's a lot of, let's call it a big underbelly of this industry,
Mm,
just aligning things. And if you strip down most of it, it just doesn't add too much value to the car.
yeah. So going to another speculation from our side, regional sourcing will become interesting. People want to buy local. I think that this is fair to say. Even if it's a Chinese foundry or a Swedish foundry or a German foundry in Europe, you would like to buy it inside to avoid the tolls, customs tariffs, call it what you like. Question is, how quickly can this be made?
Uh, That's a good question, especially it really depends on what machine size you're looking for.
Hmm.
As if you want to get something for 600 to 800, 1200 ton machine, you will probably find them within seconds. As with the reduced volumes in the ICE cars, a lot of powertrain parts get integrated or are not anymore needed and other volumes go down. That's something that's fairly easy to get. If
Mm,
you go into structural castings, which are the machine size a bit bigger, somewhere around the 3000 mark or somewhere 2500, 4400, I think these machines are quite good filled.
mm, because they are big investments. I agree with you on the big machines, but I kind of disagree from experience when it comes to the small mid-sized machines. Right now, yeah, it's 13 on the dozen. I agree. Capacity, how much do you want? But if you have a limited amount and more people, it shifts from undercapacity to overcapacity and overcapacity to undercapacity extremely fast as soon as you have an industry with long lead time investments.
Yeah, but for the small machine, I do have a different opinion than you. It's not the problem to get the machines because these machines standing around
Mm,
waiting for work, and there are a lot of them. So it needs quite a lot of Chinese OEMs to move in, or a lot of business to go back to Europe. But the struggle will be the peripherals.
mhm,
It's a different thing casting EV parts instead of a 226 bracket for something. You need to upgrade that, and I think that will be the bottleneck. That you have to get in different spray system, different lubrication, improved vacuum systems, and all of these things.
yeah, you need another type of foundry.
Exactly.
And I think many customers with small volumes. I mean, there are tons and tons and tons of castings imported from Asia for non-automotive. ironing irons, sewing machines. Die casting is pretty popular. That we know. Golf clubs, for example. The thing is, with those volumes, it's cheaper to pay the bill to the government for the taxation than to actually move the stuff home. That I'm sure of. If I was the purchasing director in my bill of material, I had some 500,000 euros worth of castings from free tools, some small foundry working good in China. Why should I bother? Just pay the bill.
It also depends where the final manufacturing is.
Yeah, sure.
If you produce the whole thing in China, it doesn't make any sense to take the castings into Europe.
No, exactly. So it's a mixed picture, to put it mildly.
It's definitely a mix. So it's also a challenging time. There are definitely opportunities to gain business and take it back from all over the world back into the EU.
Mm.
But it takes a lot of work to
Yeah.
find this piece of business that fits your machine, your peripheral status, and that you can work with. That really makes a benefit for you. Otherwise, it will be a hard time as your overall production goes down with the less sold cars.
I would like to make a recall from, I don't remember if it's the third episode or fourth episode, but I think if it's sometime, let me put it this way, I rephrase myself. It has never been this difficult to judge about the future or have ideas about the future right now. It is super problematic. I mean, we have pointed at a few things, the entry of new foundries, the entry of new car makers, what will happen with the CBAM, how many will move the production, and all these things. I mean, it's going to be massive for the upcoming 5-10 years. This we know. I mean, for God's sake, people don't know what kind of car they actually will sell in 2 years, if it will be EVs, hybrids, or gasoline driven. It's an open question, $1 million question. So, what do I want to end up to? Yeah, this is the time to really have a good board of directors and good people that actually could start to think, judge, find information, follow customers, and really understand. This is not the time to be sitting waiting with your phone for the next purchase call from the same customer about the same application. This is really the time where everybody, the smartest guys will make it. In every crisis, there's always a guy being incredibly unhealthy rich on goulash. That's going to happen in this as well.
Also, it doesn't be enough to be just smart. You also have to act and act quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And also being able to handle these businesses that come in. And there's another episode I would like to recommend to you, which is one of our beginnings of episodes, and that's high mix, low volume. Because if you have high mix, low volume production, you have to handle certain things differently to make money with it.
Definitely. And I'm pointing at another episode about the captains. That now is the time, actually, that maybe your next CEO should not be from the foundry industry.
What I'm going to do, I will link them here and here for you on YouTube that you can rewatch the videos.
And then I want to reach out to you, dear listener, because our intention now is to, I mean, we find this hard. We find this difficult to judge. It's very exciting being a part of it. But if you have any tip of someone that you think has a good view of what's happening and could help us speculate a little bit lesser and work a little bit more with some good ideas to develop this discussion, feel free, make a comment, send us the name, send an email, and we will be happy to try to interview someone about one of the topics. Because I think, end of the day, each of these topics that we brought up today is worthy of a deeper discussion, a lengthy discussion, where we actually try to really understand the question. For example, what will happen with all the brands? Will they merge into fewer numbers? So
Also,
we will come back on this.
LinkedIn. Just comment the names down below in the comment section who could be interested for us to talk to.
Or Would you like to participate and just have a question? And we interview you, even if you don't know anything about this. Let's discuss.
Or send us your question that you would like to have answered.
Hmm.
I think that's the ending for now. And then we wait for your responses. And we see us in the next episode, which will again be about gigacastings.
Looking forward to it. Thank you for listening in, and thank you for being with us. We appreciate you very, very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you and goodbye.